And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be exploring the world just as Francis Drake did. This is a game by Eagle Gryphon Games. It's 3 to 5 players, anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours, where we're going to be exploring 3 historical voyages that he made, and we're going to be terrorizing towns and overtaking fortresses, overtaking and shooting galleon ships. We're going to be getting trade goods to bring home. We're going to be blowing off cannons and bringing crews with us. We're going to be going down the street and shopping for all different resources to get to the harbor to be the first one out, all while amassing points and having a lot of fun. So we're going to check out Francis Drake here. Here's how it's played, and I'll tell you what I think at the end. Here's Francis Drake set up for 4 players. We have a very large board with some tiles, lots of countries going on. We've got a supply board over here, and everybody has their own little board as well. Let's talk about how it's played. Over the course of the game, you're going to go on 3 separate voyages for 3 of the historical years that Francis Drake did this. Over the course of those, there's going to be 2 phases in each of those voyages, and you're trying to get obviously the most points at the end of the game. And you'll score points by, let's say, at the end of the game by having different types of trade goods. We have coffee, sugar, tobacco, and indigo. And for each set of 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these, you're going to get this many points at the end of the game. So we're trying to trade some goods. When you complete conquest during the game, you're going to be getting some gold, silver, and jewels. And those will be worth points at the end of the game as well. And those conquests of terrorizing towns, forts, and galleons. And depending on however many of these you do each voyage, 1, 2, or all 3 of them, 1, 2, or all 3, you'll get points each voyage. So you'll be scoring points each voyage, and some at the end of the game. So let's talk about how these work. I'm actually going to go over the second phase of the game, of each voyage first, because it will make more sense to you that way. This is a supply board that everyone gets supplies from, and the 3 major resources in this game are crew, which essentially are your crew that you're taking on the ship, supplies, which are big barrels here, and guns. Those are your 3 major ones, and of course trade goods. Those are pretty much it for your resources. We're going to go in order: towns, fortresses, and galleons to show you the different conquests. So let's show you a town first. A town looks something like this. It just has a person's face on it like that. And essentially, it means you just need 1 crew in order to do this conquest. And if you're able to be one of the 2 people that can do this, you'll get 2 points. We'll talk about how this works in just a moment in more detail. We'll move over to something like a fortress, where some of these are randomly placed or strategically placed by 1 player. We'll talk about that later. Essentially, he needs 1 plus 2, so 3 crew and 2 guns in order to defeat this fortress, and you get 6 points if you're one of the first or second people there in order to be able to do this. You'd also, the first person would also get a silver gem there. And lastly, a galleon type of quest. If you're one of the first 2 people to be able to do this, essentially in this case, this is randomized and this is strategically placed by one of the players. And in this case, we just need 2 total guns in order to take out this galleon. If you're one of the 2 people to do it, you'll get 4 points. If you were the first person there, you'd be able to take that very expensive jewel. Now that you know what we're trying to do in the second phase of this, basically the sailing phase, how does this actually work? Well, in the harbor, leaving port, it goes in order 1 through 5. In this case, there's 4 players, so green's going to go first, then red, then blue, then orange, every turn. And they get to place where one of those ships are going. So by default, everybody has their own colored discs labeled 1 through 4. These are the priority or the order that their ships actually get to places. Now they're going to be able to place these one at a time in turn order, and they can place them, they're going to be putting them face down, but they can put them in any order, knowing that the priority is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some people will have a ghost ship and a special Golden Hind ship. We'll talk about those later, but for now, let's just concentrate on the regular ships. Now you see this is broken up into the board's 4 spots. We see a green sort of spot of the board here with a 1. We see a purplish part of the board here with a 2. We then see a yellow part of the board up here, which is 3, and we have a red part of the board way out here, which is 4. What these mean is for you need as many barrels, which is one of the supplies, in order to go that far. So if you have 4 barrels, you can pretty much go all the way through any part of the board, where if you only had 2 barrels, you could only go to the first or the second sanction. or place to go. If you had 3 like these people, you could go to any one of these 3. So obviously the more supplies, the further you can go. So in this harbor player order, start with green and working our way this way, they get to place 1 disc face down, any one of their discs, into any of the ports. And you always put them on the first spot. So maybe green goes there. Well, maybe red goes there also. And maybe even blue goes there. Huh. Orange might go something like, well, you guys are doing all that. Orange, remember, you can move all the way over to here. So maybe they'll go here. And this continues. Green, red, blue, and orange will each put 1 disc out at a time until they're all placed. Once all the discs have been placed in that order, we flip them all over. Now notice some of these have more than 1 spot here. So there was only 2 people here. Once they're flipped over, they were tied at 4th priority. And then we go to the harbor order. So red was above blue in the harbor order, so red will be first and blue will be second. In this case, where there's 1 too many, green is first, then blue. They both put 1 priority, but green was first in the harbor order. Red is out. Now he's not completely out because if one of these 2 for some reason can't do this, meaning they don't have 2 guns, this person could then slide in and do it. But for now, they're sort of on deck and possibly not being able to do this mission. So the next thing that happens once it's flipped over is everybody takes their ship of their color and puts it on their number 1 priority. So here everyone's ship is on their number 1 priority, and then we go in harbor order and each person does a conquest. Now notice these are actually larger ships, these are galleons. In order to do one of these galleon missions, you need to upgrade your ship. We'll talk about that when we talk about the first phase. But here green goes first, and he would need in this galleon to be able to have 2 guns, so he would turn in his 2 guns to the supply. He would get 4 points, and since he's the first one to do the quest, he would get this jewel. Every player has his own treasure chest. You drop the jewel right in, and so nobody can see how much you have. Red's next. They get to go where their ship is. There's nobody else here, so they'll choose the most rare item, which is indigo, and place it on their player board. We would go back to blue. They're the second one here. If they had 2 guns, they would put them in. And assuming they had the large ship, which they do, they would get 4 points. And lastly, orange. In this case, he needs 4 guns and an upgraded ship, which they have the upgraded ship. They would turn in 4 guns, they would get 6 points, and for being the first person there, they would get this jewel. Now, if they did not have 4 guns for some reason, they just would not get the the credit for doing this, and essentially they would have not gotten anything on their turn on that one. This would continue for discs 2, 3, and 4. We'd go through this order, put the ships on there, resolve the conquests until they're all done. If someone realizes that they're not going to be able to do one of their later actions, like 3 or 4, they can go directly back to port and collect either 2 or 1 point for being the first or second person there. Then we would score the voyage. So for this voyage, we see the 3 different conquests here. We see green has done all, he's successfully completed a town, a fortress, and a galleon. So he's gotten all 3 of them, so he would get 10 points. Whereas red only did 2 of them, they would get 4 points, and blue only did 1 of them, they would get 1 point, and that's scoring for the voyage. Let's say that was the first voyage. Essentially, you would now set up for the second voyage, and you would do the similar aspects of the first and second stage. However, we haven't talked about the first phase of the game yet, but now that you know how the game's actually played itself, let's go to the first phase and show you how the supplies work. So this would be the first phase that you would do before the one that we just showed you. It's called the provisioning phase. Turn order here is sort of set up randomly on the first voyage. Otherwise, it's set in order from last place gets to go first, first place gets to go last, and everywhere in between. And the first time you go through this in the first voyage, these cards are always going to match exactly what's behind it on the board. Now, the amount of supplies that you get in each one differ depending on how many players, so there's different tiles for that. But all in all, in order, what we do is, there's a street here. We're going to go around the docks and come around, and then we're going to go out to the harbor. And what you're going to be doing is placing your people to go get some supplies for you. However, the catch is you can never go backwards. So if I'm a green player and I jump all the way up here to get the queen, which I'll tell you what she does in a moment, I cannot come back and get all these. I can only move in a forward sweeping manner, and you kind of want to be sort of one of the first ones out to harbor, because the first one that gets out to the harbor is going to be the first one that gets to place. They're in priority order when they place the discs, as we saw previously in that second phase. So the green person might put a disc on this, and you can see here's 2 gray cubes, which in this case is 2 crew. And you remember crew is needed when you're doing some of the town missions. Now the red player might move here and also take 2 crew, or they might move out in front and take one of the shipyard spots. Now the shipyard spots get you 1 black cube, which is a gun, and they're getting you an upgraded ship. So essentially they would get 1 gun, and they'd get that larger ship that we talked about when you fight the galleon missions. And of course we have guns, so you go here, you get 2 guns. Those are used to do some of those fortress missions. The supplies, we have barrels of 4, 2, and 1. These obviously, as I showed you before, allow you to get further into the different territories during the second phase. The queen gets you 1 gun and 1 trade good, which again allows you to pay and get some of those trade goods we talked about, and upgrade your ship. The tavern's interesting. It's the only time that dice is really used in the game, where you can roll the die. Now you roll the die, and I've got a 2. 1 or 2, I get something that's called a ghost ship. Essentially, that's an extra disc that I get to place, and it does nothing. It's just sort of a decoy, but it allows me to play it strategically in order to make people think I'm going somewhere, or to use it maybe to play it early and see where everybody else is going before I want to place my real discs. If I rolled a 3 or 4, I'd get 2 crew, 5 or 6, 3 crew. The Admiral, you go there, it allows you to be the person that strategically places these on some of the fortress missions. Now remember, they get to put these, so there's either 0, 1, or 2 extra cannons or extra guns needed when you're doing a fortress mission. So you get to say where those go, so that's a lot. Also, if there's any gold coins left over, jewels left over at the end of the round, you get 1 point for each of those, so he's pretty powerful. Trade goods, again, you could get 2 and 1. Now keep in mind, at the end of each voyage, any extra supplies you have go back. They've pretty much all been wasted, so you can't stock up on trade goods, hope to use them in future rounds. Everything you use has to be thrown, everything you don't use is thrown away at the end of each voyage. We have the Governor. This person allows you to get 1 point for every silver jewel that's at the end of the round that's not used, and you're the one that gets to place how many extra crew or how many crew are needed in each of the town missions. So that's another strategic way to change the game around a little bit. And they get to swap 1 spot up in the harbor to go out. So it sort of pushes you up in turn order once there. We have, again, more crew. We have Drake. Drake is interesting. He's the only guy that you can go to the same place twice. In fact, you have to. Notice the circles are kind of interlocking. When you place your disc here, you take 2 crew and 2 guns. Your very next turn, you have to go here and take either 1 crew and 1 gun. Other than that, you can only go on 1 spot on each place. The pinnace is really important. This, if you get this, if you go to the first one, you get 1 gun and a pinnace. Otherwise, you just get, 1 crew and a pinnace, and the other way you get just a pinnace. This allows you to complete those fortress missions, but it allows you to sneak through the back so you don't need any guns to do any of those fortress missions. It's very powerful. The Informer is interesting. First, you get 1 trade good. Then you can either look at all the discs on a spot where you have gone in the second phase, and once doing that, you can swap any 2 of your discs, and they don't have to be the ones you looked at. Or you could look at either one of those little the galleon counters or the crew counters at a place that you're at, one of those ones that are not yet flipped over, and you look at it, and if you don't like it, you can sail somewhere else. So he gives you some good information. He's an informer. He's got good information for you. And the Golden Hind is essentially a really upgraded ship that allows you to beat anybody for anything. Essentially, it's better than a Priority 1, so this is a really powerful ship. The last one here is the Investor. Everybody gets one of these Investor cards actually on their board, and what you do is you pay 4 points, so you give up 4 victory points, but you also, instead of that, can upgrade your ship, or you can get 1 gun and 2 crew, or 2 crew and 1 gun. So it's a once per game thing that you can go there for. And lastly, you can go into one of these spots in the last dock, and if so, you can get 1 barrel or 1 gun or 1 crew if you just need 1 more of something. And the first one to get all the way through the shops past the dock will be in first order, and again, this is the order you saw earlier that gives them priority order at the different spots they do in Phase 2. In Voyages 2 and 3, these cards don't match what's here on the board underneath. They actually get shuffled up and changed, which really changes the strategy in the game. So again, you do that provisioning phase and then the sailing phase 3 times. After that's over, you essentially look at your trade goods and give you your total points for whether you have 4, 3, 2, 1 different types of goods. And you then go through your treasure and you count up how much points you have from that. You add those to the points that you have on the board already, and the one with the most points is the winner. Alright, well there's Francis Drake. So, just off the heels of BGG Con 2013, this game was, I believe, the #1 on the buzz list. Many people have already said that this game has Game of the Year potential, so it has a lot of hype. And many times, games that have this hype just do not match up. I've got to say though, this game does. It brings the goods. It's not just hype. This game is as good as people say it is. It's the type of Euro that I like. Typically, I don't like the type of Euros where it's dry and it feels like the theme's pasted on and you feel like you're just pushing cubes around. That's nothing what this Euro game feels like. I really do feel like I'm going down the shops trying to pick up the stuff. I do feel like I'm trying to figure out which place should we go first. The amount of decision making in this game is amazing. Every single turn, you've got decisions to make. And it uses sort of that, almost like a double worker placement to play this game, but the ideas and the different strategies that you use, it's just so amazing to see, and really what you're doing depends a lot on what the other people are doing. So this Euro, even though you're sort of building your own little thing and going your own place, you're really pointed sometimes as to what you probably should be doing depending on what other people have already done or what you think they might do. So it does have a level of interaction that I really like. Overall, just the game really did blow me away. I love it. I like how in between the different voyages you mix up these shops and they go in different with the location tiles so that every time you play the game, the voyages second and third are always going to be different. Just those different ideas of having the ghost ship and having the that one ship that takes over everything no matter what, and you're constantly trying to battle up, should I be, and the tension, the tension in this game, not only just going down the shops and hoping that the person that's right after you isn't going to take the one spot like Drake that you really want to go to, and of course they always do, and and then when you're on the sailing voyage, oh gosh, and when you're placing those discs, and there's just so much, and for me, there was so much tension in the game, and almost every decision wondering, are they going to go where I really want to go, and that tension rose throughout the game. And once the discs get flipped, you're like, you're like, whew. And when you're done with the game, you're almost tired because you've gone through 3 voyages of all this tension and all this battling. But overall, man, what a beautifully designed game. Gosh, if I were even to say one bad thing about it, I'm reaching here, but when you set up the game for different players, the different tiles have a slightly different bluish color depending if it's 3, 4, or 5 players, and it was hard to distinguish which ones those are, but I'm really reaching here to find something bad about this game. I really can't, other than that very minute thing. They've got a winner on their hands, and I'm jumping on the bandwagon. This game could be Game of the Year. I wouldn't be surprised for sure if it gets nominated. I wouldn't be surprised if it won. I know it's a big game. It's an expensive game. It is a lot of money. But as a gamer, I would pay the money for this because it's just fantastic. Francis Drake, you got to check this one out. Hey, one more thing before you go. If you're about to drop a comment on this YouTube page for this video and you're expecting interaction or a personal response from me, I recommend the place to do that is at my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thegameboygeek, because I don't get notified when YouTube videos get comments on the Dice Tower Network because I don't own the channel. So if you want to interact with me directly, I'll see you at my Facebook page.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.